I've carefully set aside this time for checking my email. I love you. Fughugadch, Genstith, just the Stadamk, Fabk, Vabe. Look, Fughugadz. Can I just call you Fughugadz? Look, Fughugadz. I'm sorry to say, but the feeling's not mutual. Mainly because of your long freaking name. I mean, in the time it took me to say your name, I could have done all kinds of stuff, like paint a picture of a guy with a big knife. Whoa, in fact, I'm gonna get started on that right now. Oh yeah, this is looking great. I mean, I think I could probably sell this at like the arts and crafts fair, to maybe some POWs or like somebody's dad.
Hi everyone. In case you're wondering about that random video, it's an old cartoon called Homestar Runner that was popular when I was in college. And I just thought these strong bad emails sort of connected to our unit, but don't use him as an example of writing good emails. I just hope they're a little fun. So let's get started. Before we get into the tips that we're going to talk about today for email writing, please note that you should have this document open as you watch this video. It's called Email Etiquette Notes, and you might still have it open from the previous video. But if you don't, just go to Google Classroom. You can click on this little button right here, and it'll take you there. Go to Communications, go to Classwork, and you should see it right here. If you open this up, you can click on that and it will open up this document. And as you watch the video, you'll be typing the answers from the notes, or the things from the notes here into your document. I'm filling in those blanks. So let's go ahead and get started. We've been talking about email etiquette. And the other day, we talked about how etiquette is sort of like politeness. It's a general set of expectations regarding how people should communicate. In this case, or how they should send an email. And so the big reason that we're talking about this is that I want you as students to be able to thrive by having positive and successful communications, especially with your teachers, through email. So some of the things we're going to talk about today are talking about tone, talking about how to write a clear email, talking about how structure and grammar and spelling can reflect well on you as a person. So let's get started. We're going to first start by talking about the parts of an email, and this goes with the first page of your note sheet. So when you open up your email inbox, you'll notice there are several parts always. There's the to line, and you type in the person who you're sending the email to, their email address. So if you're sending one to me, it's pnielsen@rcsnm.org. That's called the recipient. But there's also a couple of other recipient features. There's the CC that you can include. You don't have to. But that stands for carbon copy, and that's when you want somebody to be included in the conversation, even though they're not the main recipient. And then there's also another feature called the BCC, which stands for blind carbon copy, which is when you want someone to receive an email, but you don't want the recipients to know that other people are receiving it. And that's a lot of times for privacy purposes. If I'm sending an email out to a whole bunch of different people and I don't want them to see each other's email addresses because maybe they haven't given permission for their email address to be broadcasted out, that's what this blind carbon copy is for. You probably don't need to worry about that too much. But the from obviously is automatically filled in for you. That's your email address. The subject line. This is a place where you put a nice, concise summary of what your email is about. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a few minutes. The first piece of your email should always be a salutation or greeting. In this case, Dear Mr. Shore. Then you have the body of your email, which is the actual content of your message. And at the bottom, you have a closing, which includes some sort of closing message like sincerely or respectfully, and then your name. So pause this video now if you need to, and go to your note sheet and fill in the parts of an email. And now we're going to dig in and talk about some tips for emailing. Now, you guys are 7th and 8th graders, and so you have some years of education ahead of you. And so in your academic career, there will be many times when you send an email. So here are some tips to help make sure you're following email etiquette. Email tip number 1, include a clear, direct subject line. It gives you a couple of things to include here: your name, your class period, and the topic. Include all of that whenever possible. So putting your name in the subject line. Block A, for example, if you're in communications, although for online, you're not divided into blocks, so that doesn't matter as much. But this last one is probably the most important, being specific about the thing you're talking about, your topic. Please don't just say homework or assignment, because I'm not sure what that is. So including a very clear subject line. One thing to watch out for, please don't put your entire message in the subject line.
Lil Amber May says, my dad once typed out an entire email in the subject bar. Yeah, everyone's dad has done that. Everyone's dad has done that. I just want to know what you're doing next week because I want to see if I can pick you up. We're going to have a barbecue and I'll.
Tip number 2. Begin always with a professional salutation or greeting. Just like you would if you walked up to somebody in real life and you would say hello to them first, right? Or good morning before you started talking to them. It's the same in an email. Sometimes students just launch right into what they want to say. Start with a salutation. It's considered polite and good etiquette. Dear Mr. Nielsen. Good morning, Mr. Aronson. Hello, Mr. Nielsen. Something like that. Tip number 3. Please try and spell your recipient's name correctly. It's okay. I'm not going to freak out if you spell my name wrong. However, it sort of looks lazy when you email somebody with a request for them, and then it seems like you weren't thoughtful enough to double check how their name is spelled. So I'm just saying this as a general rule of thumb. It reflects poorly on you if the person you send the email to, if the first thing that they read is their name spelled wrong, they're sort of like, and you want them to, feel good about your message. So think about spelling their name correctly. Double check that. Tip number 4 is avoid using exclamation points, overusing them. It's okay to use them sometimes. I'm not saying you can never use them, but what I'm talking about is when you have a sentence and then you end it with like 3 exclamation points because you're really, really trying to emphasize it. That just sort of reduces the professionalism of your email. Tip number 5 is to avoid using all caps. Sometimes people put the caps lock on and then type their whole email out. Do you understand? But it sort of feels like for the person reading it that you're shouting at them. So try and avoid that. Tip number 6 is also to try and avoid using sarcasm in an email because it's really, really hard to figure out emotion or tone in an email. And emojis aren't very professional. And sometimes they could even be passive aggressive. Like if you look at this example down here, like a student maybe writes to their teacher and they're like, thanks for the D you gave me. And then like a little winky emoji. And it sort of is like, are they mad? Like, are they blaming me? Like, what's going on with that email? So try and avoid sarcasm. Also, related to that, don't email when angry. If your email's subject is sensitive or like it's a lot of emotion for you, it might be best to do it in person, although we don't have that luxury with distance learning, but maybe just take a minute before you start writing, or maybe a little while. Moving on to the next one. I wanted to talk about this first. In Proverbs, this is a great lesson to learn and super good wisdom from the Bible. It says, a soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. And I've just seen that time and again in my own life, not just even in emails, but whenever you're interacting with somebody. If you have a situation where one or both sides might be irritated or agitated in some way, if one of the sides is able to give a gentle, gracious reply, it brings the situation down. It diffuses it. But if there's a situation in which one or both are frustrated and somebody responds with a harsh word, then probably both sides are going to be getting irritated, right? And it escalates the situation and it becomes less productive. So I know it's counterintuitive. It goes against how we feel. But if we're in a situation when it seems like people could start becoming angry, giving a gentle answer can just diffuse the situation. And this is something for me to work on too. All right, tip number 8. this is sort of related, but try and avoid blaming and excuses. Take responsibility and ownership. It can be really easy to have this instinct to want to defend something. Like sometimes I'll have students email me and be like, Mr. Nielsen, I didn't get my assignment done, but it's because my parents had me out late. We were out till midnight and I wasn't able to get, or my internet wasn't working. And all of those things might be true, but it still doesn't reflect well on you to your recipient when you say things like that. It's way better, even if there were reasons for you to not, get your thing done, to just say, I'm sorry, I wasn't able to get it done. I'm going to try and do it next time. Can I have, some grace on this? I will say that as a teacher, I'm much more eager to give somebody grace when I can tell they're taking responsibility for the situation. So just think about that when you're writing. And one thing to look out for is to watch out for the word you when you're emailing a teacher. Just think about that. I'm not saying you can never use the word you, but watch out, because when you use the word you, it can start to be blaming the teacher. Thanks for the D you gave me, right? You're like blaming the teacher rather than you who got the grade. So take ownership in your emails. You'll find the person you're emailing will respond much more kindly to you if you do. Tip number 9 is to be clear in your email. Be specific. If you write, Mr. Nielsen, can I have another copy of that assignment? I'm like, which assignment? Right? And I have to email you back and ask that. And then you have to wait for you to email me back. And then I have to email you back, right? There's twice as much emailing going on if you're not clear. And so think about that. Be specific. And related to that, try and be concise as well. I think this is probably harder for me than it is for you. Say what you need to say in a few sentences or less. Tip number 11 is to try and include a compliment or a note of thanks in your email. You'll always find your audience is more receptive to your request. They're more ready to hear it when you come across as a kind person, someone who's thankful for what you're doing, or for what they're doing for you, and someone who's not completely narcissistic. That means self-absorbed. Quick life lesson I would recommend to you. This is not even when you're emailing. I mean, yes, emailing and just in regular life. When you're giving somebody a criticism or a complaint, think about the sandwich technique. And what the sandwich technique is to start with something good. So say, like, Dear Mr. Nielsen, I hope you're having a great day today. There's the good. Then say that your complaint. You said that I could have an extra day to do this assignment, but then you marked it as missing in RenWeb. Why did you do that? There's the complaint, okay? And then end with something good again. Be like, thanks for taking the time to read my email, or I hope you have a good evening. If you wrap a complaint in good things and positive things, the person who's reading it is going to be much more ready to hear it than if you just say your complaint, right? Then it just sounds sort of rude. And so this is something you'll find in life all over the place. If you can master the sandwich technique, you're going to find people a lot more ready to listen to what you're going to say. Fries on the side are optional. Email tip number 12 is to always include a closing on your email. When someone doesn't include a closing, it just sort of leaves their email hanging, or it seems like they didn't care enough about their email to bring it to a close or to sign their name at the bottom, right? So that means a phrase like thank you or sincerely or have a great evening, comma, and then your name. Now it says here first and last name. If the person knows you, I think first name is okay. For most of you emailing me, just your first name is fine. But if you're emailing someone you don't know, first and last name. So a closing or a signature block. Tip 13 is to allow for response time. Give somebody a day, 24 hours to reply to your email before, following up and maybe seeming irritated that you haven't gotten a reply yet. And also, this is just a general rule of thumb, try not to email somebody and say, I need something ASAP. It just sounds rude and demanding. Tip number 14 is to consider your tone. When you're talking to your boss or your teacher, your tone should be a little more formal. Your choice of words is going to be a little bit more formal. Thank you so much for helping me study for the upcoming novel test. Then a low register tone, which would be like when you're talking to a friend or a family member, and it's a little more relaxed. Like, it was so awesome hanging out with you studying for that test. Tip 15 is to proofread. Try and use complete sentences and proper grammar and spelling when you're writing an email. And I'm not saying it has to be perfect. I'm not saying that at all, but there are tools in your email built in to help you. So if somebody still has an egregious, huge number of errors that could easily have been caught in their email, it makes it appear like you don't really care. And even if that's not actually true, that's how it looks. So really think about that. Next week, we're going to be looking at 5 basic expectations in writing for all middle school writing that you do. We won't go over it too much right now, but you'll have this graphic next week, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But things like capitalizing the beginning of sentences, having periods, are things that you should always do when you write an email. So ultimately, the way that you email somebody reflects who you are on you as a person. So I just encourage you to take time to do it correctly so that you're taken seriously and so that the person you're emailing will respond well to you and also have respect for you. Also, just back to Ephesians 4:29, we're using our language, our words, to build others up, to benefit others, and reflect well on God. All right, that's it for this lesson. Thanks so much.